Hello and welcome to the Infertility podcast. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Candace. Grab a biscuit because we've got the tea on all things infertility. If you'd like to stay up to date with our story, follow me on Instagram at Operation Baby Bump and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Operation Baby Bump. To get connected with others going through infertility, you can join the forums on theinfertility.com. This is a community resource created for infertiles by infertiles. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, please rate us and leave us a cheeky little review. Episode 10.
Wow.
Hi guys.
Double
Episode
digits.
10. Double digits. I didn't think this podcast was going to go anywhere.
I know. 1 million listeners later.
That would be weird.
That would be weird.
Yeah, so in the last episode, I talked to Ashley about her DOR and her genetic factors.
Good episode.
Part
Good
of her
banter.
Yeah, and we discussed something that raised a few eyebrows.
What was that?
The story about you slaying a snake. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah. God, this is a day that will live in infamy.
Just for the record, I am terrified of snakes.
Yeah.
So,
little story then. Let's do a little story time. Jack and Ori, everyone sit down. Get ready for this. So, the year was 2015. Yeah, 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And we are clearing out the garden of our house that we'd had for probably less than a year at that point.
And for those USA listeners, the garden means the backyard.
I think they know, don't they?
No, not everybody knows English. The Queen's English.
Good old Queen. Anyway, so we're cleaning out this garden. It's been completely neglected by the previous owners. And there were leaves everywhere from our tree.
We replaced the fence.
Anyway, so we're clearing up. There's some bits and pieces everywhere. And we removed this big pile of leaves. And then out of nowhere comes this at least 11 foot long.
Oh my gosh.
What?
You're exaggerating the length.
Definitely.
Men always exaggerate the length.
It's the girth where they get you.
Oh my god, can we just... My parents are listening to
Sorry,
this.
Mum, Dad. Alright, so anyway, so I'm pulling out these leaves and then all of a sudden this foot long, maybe bigger, comes slithering out, right? Candace is... Where are you? Are you inside?
I didn't see it. I was in the yard, but I had my back to it, and you said, don't look, don't turn around.
Get in the house, didn't I?
And I knew what it was.
Yeah.
I didn't even have to ask.
So I had a shovel in my hand. So me being the overly manly man I am, as you could tell by how deep my voice went. Anyway, so this snake's giving it the big un. He's giving it the sliver. So I'm like, not today, Galvatron. He's giving it the sliver. So I went at him, chopped him, maybe 3 times. Yeah, chop. Totally took him out. He's in pieces, literally in pieces. And then I'm like, oh, that felt good. Bloodlust. So I picked him up, threw him into the pond. Dead. But wait, there's more. There's more, Candace.
Mm-hmm.
And you know there's more.
Mm-hmm.
Candace is now in the house right now. And I'm moving another pile of leaves. Oh, here comes his twin brother. Here he comes, slithering at me. I screamed, Candace, do not come outside. She's like, ah! And I was like, do not come outside. So
I didn't say it that way.
anyway, so I got him as well, chopped him up, and I threw him in the pond. I was like, the world doesn't always deserve a hero like this. Me.
Yeah, that's a good story.
Saved your life twice in one day.
He's my hero. Never been more turned on in my life. Then we moved out of that place and moved up to the 5th floor where they couldn't get us.
Couldn't get us. Although we did have a problem with owls up here. We don't.
Let's get to today's episode. I wanted to talk about things in the ute. the uterus.
Oh, I thought, isn't that a ute, a form of newt?
I do not know. I'm not familiar with the species.
Ute.
Anyhow, I wanted to talk about things that are abnormal with the uterus. Things like polyps and fibroids, and something that I learned about just recently called Asherman Syndrome. There's a friend that I've made on Instagram. Her name's Kelsie, and
Shout out, Kelsie.
What's up? And she has Asherman Syndrome. I was so interested because I've never heard about this, and I really wanted to interview her. So I gave her a call, and let's listen.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello there, friend. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I was just making some notes for all of this.
Sweet. This feels a little bit like a blind date, to be honest.
It kind of does.
Like I actually know what you look like, so in that aspect, it's not a blind date. I actually know a lot about you because you have an extensive range of videos on your YouTube channel, so...
Right. I know. It's like Tinder for the infertile.
Right. I'm talking to Kelsie, a.k.a. it's Kelsie's Life. That's how I know her by. And she's also a YouTube sensation, so we are very lucky that we booked her on this podcast, on our little podcast. So thank you so much for doing this today. In this series, I really just wanted to kind of shed light on some different aspects of, or different components of infertility, because I feel like we all kind of have these different ailments, if you will, and sometimes we share them with other people, and then sometimes we don't even know, because a lot of people I know have unexplained infertility, so they're still searching for an actual reason why they're not getting pregnant. So I think this will really help people to kind of learn more about what other people are going through. So I guess just tell us a little bit about yourself, like how you met your husband and when you got married.
Yeah, so, we're actually college sweethearts, so
Aww.
We met back in college, and, I don't want to say it was like a love story, like love at first sight, but I mean, it kind of was. We definitely clicked right away, and 11 months after meeting, we were engaged, so we definitely knew, like, we had found the one.
Yeah.
Pretty young. I mean, I was 23 when I got married, which I guess nowadays is kind of young. I don't know.
Yeah.
All over on that spectrum. But yeah, when you know, you know.
Absolutely.
When we got married, right off the bat, I mean, I guess we were like, maybe we'll just like be married for a year, do the whole like typical 1 year marriage, and then we'll get pregnant right after that. It'll be great. Yeah. I feel like so many people kind of go into it with that thought process, like, all right, I'm gonna ditch the pill. I'll be pregnant by this day. I'll have a baby by this day. It'll be great.
Yeah.
So we got married in 2015. We actually just celebrated our 4th wedding anniversary last week.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. It was awesome. So we're 4 years in. And so once we got married, we ditched the pill probably like 6 or 7 months after the big day. And, we were ready. We're like, all right, let's do this. And it was interesting. I had been on the contraceptive pill since I was 16, so a long time. I had no idea what a cycle should be like. I was totally oblivious and naive to how this process was going to go.
Yeah.
But, after we ditched the pill, I want to say it was probably 4 months went by, and I never got a cycle. So we were confused. We're like, well, I know I should be getting periods because we can't really try if I don't really have those.
Yeah.
So, of course, we were just like, well, maybe I should just, like, go get checked out, see what's going on. Told my OB what was happening, and she kind of did the Band-Aid approach, what I like to call it. She was like, "Oh, no periods? Okay, well, if you just want to get pregnant, let's just throw some Clomid your way."
Yeah.
You know, the typical thing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that all started.
Right. Did you have periods when you were on the pill?
I did. They were very light. They probably were maybe 2 days, and I considered that, all
normal.
right, that was it.
Yeah.
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 Yep, that was it.
Interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was kind of like when you started Clomid pretty early on in your marriage, and then after Clomid, when did you get an infertility diagnosis? Was it at the time of the Clomid?
It wasn't. So we did the Clomid, and I got pregnant the very first round I took Clomid, which was crazy and very unexpected. The whole cycle didn't make sense to me. She just told us, like, okay, do the deed on these days, and you'll get pregnant. And I did, so I was like, oh, okay, sweet.
Clomid, the amazing.
the magical drug. And shortly after, about a week later, I miscarried naturally, and then this whole world of infertility and miscarriage really came to my attention.
Right.
I was like, what are we doing? Like, what is happening? That shouldn't have happened.
Right.
That doesn't happen to people. And I really started doing research at that point. So we stayed with my OB for a little bit longer. She wasn't concerned about the miscarriage. She's like, oh, that's super common. A lot of people miscarry their first baby. Let's try letrozole. Maybe that'll be better for you. So we gave that a go. And I think we did 2 rounds. I got pregnant on the second round. So I'm like, okay, sweet. This is it. All right. And we saw a heartbeat on that baby. Everything was looking great. And I went in 10 weeks, and the baby had stopped developing. So, yeah, that was a gut punch, because you're like, oh my gosh, no way this is going to happen a second time. Like, we're good, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't. So we ended up having to have a DNC, just because of the size of the baby, and I was in a mental place where I was like, no, I want this done. Like, I want this over with. And this is when, like, the whole Asherman's thing started coming to my attention. Was when I had the DNC, she kind of expressed, she's like, you had a lot of scar tissue in there. It's kind of weird to see, especially for someone that's never had any kind of uterine procedure before. It doesn't normally look like that. So I was like, so what does that mean? She's like, oh, it's probably nothing. And she just kind of brushed it under the rug. So, I mean, I can keep going.
Yeah.
I have the full story, but if you have questions, like, feel free to stop me.
Tell us. We want to know it all.
So, after she kind of said that, it really raised a red flag. In my mind, I'm like, well, why do I have scar tissue in there? I've never had any other procedures, in that region.
Right.
So it didn't make sense. So I started doing my own research, just Googling scar tissue in the uterus. And Asherman's popped up, and it kept popping up. And there's a really great resource. It's ashermans.org. They're a great foundation. People can donate to it. It's to keep research for Asherman's going. But basically, I kept coming across that. And when I had my follow-up appointment after the DNC, I kind of, like, brought that diagnosis to her and was like, do you think this could be that? Do you think we need to do something else? And she just kind of dismissed it. And at that point, I was just done. I didn't want to seek her help anymore. She wasn't really helpful. She was definitely what I called the Band-Aid doctor. And just wanted to keep moving forward. We're going to get you pregnant. But I'm like, well, what if that's not an option?
Right.
So I sought out a reproductive endocrinologist in my area. He had, the top reviews. And what I noticed about some of the reviews of him was that he diagnoses and does surgery for Asherman's patients. So I sought him out, and it was during my consult with him, before I really even got a chance to tell him of my suspicions, by just telling him my history, he was like, let's check you out for Asherman's. So this was like a yes, score.
Yeah.
Like, he wants to look for it before I even mentioned it. So yeah, that's kind of how how that went. And
that's crazy. That's so good that he was really intuitive and like, you know, picked up on that right away, because from what I researched of it, and I did watch your YouTube video. By the way, she has a YouTube video all about her diagnosis of this and everything if you want to know more. And it was so interesting to me because this seems to be a really rare condition, right?
Yeah. It is super rare. I think maybe 2% of the population gets diagnosed with Asherman's. But it was kind of explained to me that the reason the diagnosis is so low is because this isn't something that can be found in like regular diagnostic testing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So
You
kind
have
of
to
like
get all up in there.
endometriosis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Kind of like endo. Like
Yeah.
you have to really explore to find this, and so a lot of people get overlooked, and it's missed quite a bit.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about what Asherman Syndrome is. What causes it, and how it's treated.
So kind of like the textbook definition of Asherman's is when scar tissue is found within the uterine cavity or on the cervix. And kind of a big difference that I wanted to point out between like Asherman's and endo, because I think a lot of people can kind of misconstrue the two because they're in the same area. They kind of have very similar symptoms. Asherman's is usually caused by some form of trauma that occurs within the uterine cavity. Whereas endo, you're the pro on that, so I'll leave that to you. You know, endo's something where, you know, you're born with it usually. It's usually hereditary.
Yeah.
It's like not a circumstantial thing. It's like you're born with it. It grows within you. Whereas Asherman's, it's more so something happened within the area to cause that scar tissue.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and it's frustrating because I know a lot of people, I think about 25% of people that have a DNC end up with Asherman syndrome, which is a pretty high number. Yeah, it's crazy. And I know DNCs happen for a variety of reasons, whether it's miscarriage, you have one after you have a baby, or a C-section. So it can happen to a lot of people, and a lot of people don't know about it. So when they lose their periods, or they have really painful pain at the time of a period but no period comes, that's definitely like two of the biggest symptoms I would kind of like to call out.
Just kind of get stuck in there.
Yeah,
right?
That's exactly what happens. It gets stuck. It's very painful. I've been hospitalized for the pain before.
God.
It's very uncomfortable. Granted, the blood does get reabsorbed back into the body, but at the time that it's happening, it does not feel good.
Right. No.
Yeah.
That sounds miserable.
Yeah, it's not a good time. So, yeah, Asherman's in a nutshell is just scar tissue within the uterine cavity.
Right. So, to have it treated, like you said, you have to have it removed, like via DNC. Could it grow back?
Yeah, so you definitely, the surgery to have it removed, you're going to end up having a laparoscopy and probably a hysteroscopy along with it, just to, really get in there, because sometimes the scar tissue can spill out of the uterus and start to affect other organs near or around it.
Mm-hmm.
For my case, that did happen. The Asherman's was in my uterus, blocking a tube. It ended up wrapping around my ovary and spilling out to my colon. So it was definitely like growing its way around. And obviously for your reproductive health, that is
not
a big
good.
no thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and your bum health. Like,
yeah, right?
I know endometriosis also affects, like, I had endo on my bowels, and I always thought I had like IBS or something.
Yes.
Did you have any of those symptoms? Not to get too personal, but we are talking about your uterus.
I feel like I'm an open book at this point. I'm like, everyone knows everything. I have pictures of like my uterus on YouTube.
I've actually seen your uterus, so I feel comfortable asking you about your bowels for some reason.
I'm not shy. And yes, it has affected so many parts of my health in terms of reproductive health, digestive health, and it's like caused some leaky gut problems. Like it's gone up, and it definitely affects more than just the reproductive organs.
Do you feel better after having it removed?
So it's interesting because you asked earlier, and I think I forgot to answer, but Asherman's can come back.
Mm-hmm.
Just like with anything, like, you get a scar,
Yeah.
and the scar will always be there. So even if you have it removed, the possibility of it coming back is pretty high. So most people with Asherman's, once they have it removed, it's not over. And
Right.
you will probably have to be treated again. I know women, so many women. I'm in this really great resource. If anyone that's listening has Asherman's, there's a Facebook group just dedicated to Asherman's patients. So you can really connect with other women that have it and kind of bounce ideas off of them. But when I initially was treated with my surgery, which was a year and a half ago now, I felt great. My cycles were normal. They were like 4 or 5 days long. Things were going really smoothly. But I've noticed over time that has diminished. And I'm being checked in about a month to see if it's back. And I'm praying it's not, but I kind of have this gut feeling that it is.
Oh, no. So how long ago did you have it removed?
Yeah, it was about a year and a half ago from now. Yeah, because it was October 2017 that I had it treated. Obviously, I had to heal for about 3 months before we could start any treatments again for TTCing. And, we did a bunch of IUIs. Nothing worked. And, yeah, so now we're under the IVF road. Right.
Welcome.
Yeah.
We're happy to have you.
Thank you. So
if you have any questions, let us know.
I definitely will.
From us
Thank
old
you for welcome
veterans.
to the club. Right. Yeah, you definitely have the scoop.
Yeah. Well, I'll spill the tea on all things IVF.
Yes, please.
Oh, Lord. Now, so I also wanted to talk about polyps and fibroids because Asherman's, to me, sounds really similar. Like, it sounds really similar to endometriosis, but also, I had polyps, and they found that before we did IVF, and they identified that by an HSG. And they can actually see it through an HSG or an SHG. And at the time, we thought that, that's the reason for our infertility. So, if anybody doesn't know what polyps are, they are just uterine tissue that grows abnormally. So they like bunch up in the uterus instead of having like the smooth uterine lining. It's like little wart things in there. And usually they can be cancerous. And fibroids are a little bit different because they're actual muscle tissue. It's not uterine tissue, it's actually muscle tissue. So it can grow in the uterus. They're usually bigger than polyps, and it can also grow outside of the uterus. And polyps and fibroids, they cause heavier periods than normal, bladder discomfort, but they can be removed via, like, either I had to have a D&C. It was initially it was like a hysteroscopy, and then he basically had to just scrape it all out because it was like ridiculous in there. He couldn't just snip them off like he intended to do. But it's interesting to me because, like you were saying, D&Cs can cause Asherman's. One of the risks of like hysteroscopies and polyp removal is depositing scar tissue in the uterus. So it's like, what do we do? Do we get it removed or do we leave it?
Exactly. It's a lose-lose situation because obviously when you need a D&C, you obviously need something removed, whether, like you said, it's a polyp or a fibroid or a miscarriage. So odds are you have no way around it and you have to get it. And I feel like a lot of doctors don't explain the risk that can happen with a D&C because, I mean, D&Cs are ancient. They've been doing them forever.
Yeah.
And no one talks about any of their repercussions. But like you said, your D&C ended up being a lot more invasive than they originally intended. And one of the ways to get Asherman's is by a really extreme or rough D&C, and it's scary because most people don't know that happened to them.
Yeah, that it's so amazing. I'm fascinated. I feel like I'm always learning something new in this community. And did you ever like have polyps or fibroids or know anything about that, or was it strictly Asherman's? Was it both?
So it was. I was definitely aware of what they were. So when my Asherman's was originally found via SHG, and he told me, he's like, we're looking for 3 things, and we're gonna hope we see none. And he said, we're looking for polyps, we're looking for fibroids, and we're looking for Asherman's. And obviously, they all 3 look really different.
Right.
When you see them on the scan. The Asherman's is a little different because the polyps, you can kind of see them like directly sitting within the uterus or somewhere around them. But the Asherman's is like just kind of like this white, foggy looking stuff that isn't necessarily like in the uterus, but it's surrounding it.
Wow.
So it's interesting. So I was definitely like on my radar. I was like, oh, I probably have a fibroid. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what she thought was the scar tissue. But then he point blank was like, oh no, that's Asherman's. I'm like, great.
Wow. Wow. Well, I think it's amazing that you finally found a doctor who is really kind of in tune with your history and was like ready to help you in that way.
Yeah.
Is he going to be your RE for IVF?
He is. I feel very lucky to have found him as a doctor. I know many doctors don't either know much about Asherman, so they're not looking for it. And I know I mentioned earlier that Facebook group for Asherman's patients, and within that there is a list of doctors throughout the country that specialize in Asherman. So if anyone's looking for that kind of information, it is out there because not all doctors know what they're doing when it comes to Asherman's.
Right. I think, and I know this is kind of, my clinic is very, if they haven't seen it before, it's not on their radar type of thing.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And they're just kind of like looking at a limited number of items. Like my clinic was not looking for my endometriosis. They did not screen me for it. They were not interested in pursuing that. I mean, that was just like something that fell by the wayside. So it's so important to have those resources, to have a doctor that's equipped to be prepared to, I guess, investigate and be ready. I mean, like, it sounds like he already knew what that was. And so what's the name of the Facebook group?
Ooh, let me look real fast. I have Facebook in front of me. It should just, if you just search, it should be Asherman Syndrome Awareness and Support. So it's a closed group. You have to request to get in there. I believe it asks you a question or two, like if you've been diagnosed, if you're suspicious of diagnosis, things like that. And there are women in there that have gone through the gamut with Asherman's. I know some women that have had it hundreds of times worse than I have, and it's truly inspiring in that group to see them come out on the other side with their post Asherman's baby, because the uterus after that is so traumatized that the fact that it carried a pregnancy to term is amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fantastic.
That's great.
Yeah.
I gotta love Facebook groups. I mean, I'm a part of a Dr. Braverman's, that's called Braverman's Hopefuls Facebook group. And I mean, working with him is so strange because he's like in New York and he works remotely with all these people across the world. And so having that kind of place to ask questions and post encouragement and seek support is amazing. So I'm so glad that you found that.
Yeah, I agree. Those things, especially when, you're up late at night Googling stuff and it's eating away at you, you can just like hop in there and you've got women going through the same thing,
Absolutely.
Googling the same things, and it's awesome.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. Well, Kelsie, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. If people want to get to know you more, tell us how they can find you on YouTube and Instagram.
Oh, yeah. So you can find me pretty much on every social media platform at just It's Kelsey's Life. And then more specifically on Instagram, I do have a dedicated Instagram account just for infertility. And you'll just find that It's Kelsey's Life _TTC.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelsie. I really appreciate your time, and I hope you have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Alrighty, bye-bye.
Right, bye. Isn't she so nice?
She's wonderful.
Yeah, she's really cool. I feel like if she lived here, we'd be real life friends.
I do too. I do too.
Yeah, she's always really like bubbly and positive, and I like people like that because I'm not that type of person.
No.
I try to be positive when I'm on Instagram, and I try not to bring other people down, but I don't always feel happy and upbeat, and so I like following people like her that are always just like her smile. It just, it's one of those things that you can just tell she's like a genuinely happy person. So we were really lucky to get her. I love having guests. Do you remember when I had polyps?
I do remember.
When we found those.
Yeah.
We were in there and we found those polyps.
Took some digging, I tell ya.
Oh gosh. Kelsie and I discussed this earlier in the podcast, but we were excited because we thought that was the reason for our infertility.
I call them the tonsils.
They look like uterine tonsils. Yeah. It's really weird. I kind of have a little connection to today's episode.
Yeah.
Of course, my polyps have been removed. They were actually removed in 2017.
17, yeah.
They can grow back, so I've had 2 HSGs since then, and I've also had another hysteroscopy, and they hadn't grown back at that time. So I believe when I had my laparoscopy, they also did another hysteroscopy.
Yeah.
So, and cleaned me out there too, if there were anything in there, which I don't think there was. So yeah, hopefully they don't come back. Yeah. Stay away.
Stay away. You're not living rent-free in me. Next time on the Infertility Podcast.
PCOS.
Thanks for listening. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Candace.
Night.